Welcome back to another video, everyone. Today we're going to be looking at Poppy Playtime. Specifically, we're going to be looking at all of the currently available chapters, that being 1, 2, 3, and 4. So, without further ado, let's just get straight into the video. Poppy Playtime is marketed as a horror game, however, to me it's more of a puzzle game than a horror game. It's got horror elements attached, but you're mainly dealing with puzzles over scary things. The story is a very deep and expansive story that you learn about throughout the games, as well as through little VHS tapes that you'll find throughout the games, and in chapter 3 and 4 you find little notes scattered around that expand the story even further than the game already does. So the first part of my review that I want to bring up is Playtime. Chapter 1 starts and finishes within about 15 minutes. It's free. There's not a lot to it, it's more of just a demo to show you what's going to be going on with the game as you progress into chapter 2, 3, and 4. Chapter 2, however, takes about an hour to an hour and a half. It's much longer and it has more mechanics and is more polished than chapter 1 was. Chapter 3 and 4, however, took me about 2 hours and I was going at a slower pace. So I believe you're probably looking about an hour and a half, closer to an hour 45. However, chapter 4 being slightly longer, to me was a bad thing, because I do not like chapter 4, but we'll get into that when we talk about it. But let's start with chapter 1. And unfortunately, there's not a whole lot to discuss here. The short runtime gives you exactly what it shows. A small taste of what the development team are capable of. This chapter has virtually no scares outside of the Huggy chase sequence, which was quite intense, and the ending of the chapter leaving us with many questions of what happened and why Poppy is in the case in the first place. Chapter 2 keeps the steam rolling by introducing Mummy Longlegs, who gives us a lot of info, but there's also a quality increase in the gameplay at this point. The game starts to feel more polished. There's a new hand introduced as a mechanic as well, this being the green hand. It is able to hold a charge of electricity for about 10 seconds and then deposit it onto another point. The main meat of Chapter 2's gameplay are 3 main areas or encounters where you play puzzles. In between each of these areas, there are traversal sections. These are just areas that you run through, you get a little bit of lore maybe, you might find a little trophy that's scattered around, and you're going to do a couple of puzzles, a couple of smaller, less intense puzzles before you build up to the bigger puzzles. I quite liked this change in pace when you were going from the large puzzle to the smaller puzzles. It gave you time to calm down a little bit, as well as have a look around and see what else you'd find besides the obvious things. I also liked how throughout the game of Chapter 2, Mummy goes from what was clearly an insane character to an outright insane character on the opposite spectrum of crazy. She goes full nut job at the end of the chapter and in the last sort of sequence. But I actually really liked how this was played out, where she went from crazy to batshit crazy. Another nice twist that they added was the introduction of Kissy Missy. She's essentially Huggy's female counterpart. The good thing about her is she doesn't attack us when we meet her. She actually helps us by opening a door, which to my knowledge was the first time that had been done in the game. So it was nice to see that not every single toy is out to gut me like a fish. My absolute favorite moment from chapter 2 was the end sequence with hide and seek with Mummy Longlegs. It was really intense at times and I generally got scared at a few points. Not only that, but like the chase sequence in chapter 1 with Huggy, when she does eventually chase you to end the chapter, her death is brutal. She gets crushed between a crusher. That doesn't make a lot of sense, but I'm leaving it in the video. But she gets atomized, and she's screaming the entire time. And it's kind of traumatic. And then the prototype, who is what I assume to be the main villain of the franchise, just kind of reaches under and takes her body. right after she's just died, freshly dead, just sweeps her up. It was a very what the fuck moment for me personally. But that's when the next twist comes, when we get on the train and Poppy reveals that, oh no, she's betrayed us. Like that wasn't obvious. The Poppy betrayal was very, very obvious, and I expect it, and at the first opportunity, I will be punting that doll across the room. But she does lead us off the tracks and crashes the train we were on that we were meant to escape in. And that leads us into chapter 3, which is also my favorite chapter, and I'll be honest about that right now. In this chapter, we do get to meet a lot of toys and characters, and we get to do a lot of things. Ollie is introduced as a guide. Poppy and Kissy ask for our help and further develop Poppy's character. Kissy just kind of stands there. And my personal favorite character in the franchise, Catnap, is introduced. And let me tell you, he might not be physically present like Huggy was, or how Mummy was, where she's always watching over you, but Catnap's presence, at least to me, is felt very readily. Everyone is afraid of Catnap. Everyone doesn't want you to be near Catnap. Catnap doesn't want you near Catnap. He wants to be left alone to do his own thing. But it feels like he's watching you through the entire game, even if I know he's not. But you also catch glimpses of him in the smoke, running around, doing things, and he's this giant purple cat. It's kind of terrifying. But once again, and this is the only negative thing that I have to say about Chapter 3, is we have to revert back to the 3 encounter system. However, these sections are more involved than Chapter 2, there's a lot more exploration, and the areas seem slightly larger. The Dog Day chase scene, for me, was quite scary and quite intense, because I really did struggle with that whole fight. But also, to make gameplay more interesting, there are 2 new hands introduced. There's the purple hand, which lets you jump off the jump pads. Don't know how that works physically, but sure. And there is the flare hand, which lets you shoot it at the nightmare critters, which are the little toys, and you can scare them off. This is a pretty interesting idea and concept, if you ask me. I liked it. The maze wasn't too difficult in the nightmare critter area, but it was still fun to play. However, I do want to note that the teacher encounter is terrifying. She's just following you the entire time. It's absolutely disgusting. I hate dolls with a passion, and she's just a giant doll chasing you. It's why I hate Poppy so much. She's just bad. Now, moving towards the end of the chapter, we have my favorite part of the chapter, as well as my least favorite part of the chapter, that being the catnap fight. While the catnap fight is very, very interesting and very, very cool, it's also super difficult. And I think I died so many times that the game just gave it to me in a way, where he only appeared down one hallway, and that resulted in me beating him. However, my issue with the fight also is that we don't technically kill him. Once again, the prototype shows up, shanks Catnap, and just takes the body. We don't beat him. He doesn't die by us. The prototype just takes him away. But to end out the chapter, we head down to a door that Poppy was wanting us to go down to enact her master plan, which she hasn't fucking told us at this point, because why would you? And in going down, we start to descend, and then Kissy screams, and that's the end of the chapter. This whole chapter to me was amazing. The storytelling and the characters were really interesting. Poppy not being there for most of it was a highlight, if I'm being honest. And I feel like this is where mob games hit their stride. However, this is also a downside, because we're about to talk about Chapter 4, and I have feelings about Chapter 4. Chapter 4 was seemingly marketed and in-game represents a turning point. It's no longer about going down and finding your co-workers. It's now about beating the prototype. and beating whoever else Poppy needs us to beat. It sets itself up as the penultimate fight. But during the chapter, we don't get progress that penultimate fight. We just lose constantly, in my opinion. We only have one small victory when we beat the Doctor. And honestly, the Doctor didn't even seem like that big of a threat, if I'm being honest. He's just kind of there for most of it, talking down to you. He throws you in a pit, which is what you've been watching of the gameplay. But that's all he really does. He doesn't physically attack you. Even in the Doctor's fight, I run past 90% of the enemies. There's no difficulty there. I think I might have got hit once in that fight. We also meet Dowie in this chapter, who is a character that I don't like. I get what they were going with, and I understand that he's meant to have multiple personalities because he's made of multiple people, but it doesn't come off as interesting. It just comes off as really annoying, in my opinion. He ends up being the final boss, but the blame is on us for some reason. Safe Haven's destroyed because we left it, apparently. But that's not what happened. Dowie chased the prototype away, and then the prototype got into Safe Haven and destroyed it anyway. But we're to blame for that, even though we did what Dowie asked us to, which was fixing the generator. And the Dowie fight itself isn't something that I rather enjoy. I thought the Dowie fight was actually kind of shit. For one, the nitrogen canisters are explained prior in a way, but the saws are new and that gets taught to you. However, he has a grab attack that you don't learn anything about, and I completely randomly figured out that you just shoot him in the 3 faces, and when you do that, he stuns and lets you go. But not only that, his character motivation just doesn't sit right with me. But in the end, we do kill him, and then when we head towards the final fight, or not the final fight, we head towards the final area, he just kind of appears again, even though he's meant to be dead. And in doing that, we kill him again, permanently now. And then, right when I thought everything was over and I was like, good God, I can get out of this damn game, Huggy shows up. Again. We haven't seen him since the end of chapter 1. And he's just suddenly back now at the end of chapter 4, going into the final chapter, or what I expect to be the final chapter. It just doesn't sit right with me. Why would Huggy come back now? What relevance does he have? Because he can't beat the prototype. That's going to have to fall to us. So what can Huggy do, is my question. Why is he here? It just feels like Mob threw everything the fandom wanted into chapter 4 and then called it a day. So what happened? Because obviously the reviews show very mixed feelings about chapter 4, as well as I have very mixed feelings. I think some things were done well, but other things weren't done well. So what happened between chapter 3 and 4 that made it so things weren't as special while playing the game? Well, I don't think it's technically the developers' fault. However, the developers wanted to go for a grand scale, a grand scene to show off what they can do. And they did that very well. However, just because you can make a grand scene doesn't mean you should. Look at chapter 3, for example. While it is very large and expansive, you're in one area for the whole game. You're in this, the play care. And that's one contained area. Even though you go to 3 or 4 separate areas during that time, it's still enclosed in one area, in Catnap's area. Where this, you go for the entire prison. There's an entire prison complex you run through. To me, it's just too much, too large. I think it could have been done better. I would have much rather Mob tone down the size of the game and the scale of the game and focus on producing the quality that they made with Chapter 3 over making something like what they did with Chapter 4. Not only that, I would have liked more time with Dowie. Well, I did say I don't like him as a character, that's mostly because we don't know him. He's kind of just left as this ambiguous entity who's there and sometimes gets angry at you and sometimes doesn't. I am just hoping that Mob really nails the quality for Chapter 5, because I do think this franchise is worth playing. I do highly, highly recommend this, because for 5 or 6 hours of gameplay, it's only $50. That's not a lot. And if you are enjoying horror games, if you like puzzles, you're going to like this. But I really hope Mob nail Chapter 5, because I would love to see a really nice conclusion to this. But how about you? What do you think? Let me know down below in the comments. Also, please do like and subscribe, as it helps me out immensely. If you guys want to see more videos about Poppy Playtime, do let me know, because I am considering doing a character deep dive into Dowie, because I believe that he does have a lot of potential for a very in-depth video analysis. That's all from me. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.